everybody, and welcome back to the Turn the Tassel Show. My name is Stephen Ampersand. I'm your host, and as always, we are here to help you and the people you love get to and through college, university, or the trade schools earlier on time with minimum to no debt. So, we're back in here and excited to be back. We're traveling this week, and so we're coming to you live again from the great ATL, Atlanta. And it's been a really good trip this week thus far. I wanted to jump on, though, and talk about the latest developments as it relates to the student loan debt crisis and the news that came out today by way of Forbes originally, but ultimately through higher education, inside higher ed, that President Joe Biden is looking for ways to forgive student loan debt. He's looking for ways to do so. So what I'm going to do here is, again, we're remote, so we're traveling, so it's a little bit different. But I'm going to try to share my screen, see if I can make this work so that you can see the article, and then we'll go through it together. It's from Inside Higher Ed. And there we go. So the article is entitled, Biden Looks at Options for Forgiving Student Debt. And this is by Scott Jacek, April 27th of 2022. President Biden said Tuesday that he was looking at options to forgive most student debt, CBS News reported, citing comments he made to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. The lawmakers encouraged a large cut in student debt. In the past, the president has said he favors eliminating $10,000 in student debt for all debtors. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that the administration would make a decision about canceling some student loan debt between now and the end of August, or the pause would be extended further. And many of us know that they've already begun to, they've extended, once again, the student loan debt repayment schedule because of the impacts of the pandemic, et cetera. And thus, have, put it off for another several months, basically get people through the summer so they don't have to pay their student loan payments. And I think the most important part of that is that they've also frozen the interest accrual aspect of it as well, which means if you have student loans out there already, not only are you not required to make your monthly payments, but you're also not having your debt grow while it's being paused, which is typically what happens when you do a forbearance or a deferment. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's unpack it and let's see, what does this mean, right? Well, for anyone who's been following my program, anyone who's seen any of my content, you know that I have preached from the mountaintops. The best way to get your student loan debt forgiven is to never enter it in the first place. Okay. It's a trap. It's a terrible trap. And unfortunately, it disproportionately impacts women in our society because women make up 60% of the college populace, and they carry literally 90% of 60 to 70% of the student loan debt that's out there. So of the $1.73 trillion of student loan debt that's out there, women are carrying $1 billion of it. Okay. $1 trillion. Is that right? Yeah, $1 trillion of it. So of the 1.7 trillion, the 0.7, which is $700 plus billion, is assigned to men who have borrowed student loans, and a full $1 billion worth is attributed to women. So what does this mean? It means that folks are crippled coming out of their college degree programs and are ultimately carrying month-to-month payments that almost never really touch the interest rate. Now, it varies. I'm speaking in general terms here. If I had my soundboard, you'd hear this generalization alert. For the most part, we're talking about $1 billion that is essentially saddled around the necks of women who've gone to college to better themselves and advance themselves. And they come out and they've got this obligation for 120 months, decade, or more if they take a more extended period, like the 20-year period, etc. The point is, once you get into the student loan debt issue, you're really throwing a Hail Mary and hoping that someone like Joe Biden and his administration will come in and rescue you, as opposed to making a sound decision up front before you get into that mess, and thus don't need somebody to spring you from the trap. Okay, so how do we get here? Without going into a full-on detail of the history of how we got to the student loan program, I'll just say that the idea was that we wanted to provide access to everyone to be able to go to college, because education was deemed, and I think appropriately so, the pathway from poor, working poor, lower middle, and even middle class to get into upward mobility and advance in society and really achieve the American dream. So when you had the Higher Education Act and the Civil Rights Act and other important legislation come through to make student loans possible, it began first and foremost with private lenders, right? So folks could go get student loans from banks and then owe those back to the banks. And at that time, in the very beginning, if you got in over your head, let's say you wanted to go be a physician and you borrowed $250,000 back then, right? You could, because you borrowed the money from the bank, you could file for bankruptcy just like you can with any other consumer debt, and essentially be forgiven of that debt by way of bankruptcy. And many people employed that strategy. It was like, all right, I'll go ahead and borrow the loans, pay for school, become a doctor. I'll file for bankruptcy when I'm brand new in my residency, etc. And by the time I get through residency and get to an attending level, yada, yada, I'll be making so much money, I will have recovered from the bankruptcy and off I go into life. So many people took advantage of that. Lawyers did that, etc. Well, that was quickly seen as a loophole and a challenge. And then eventually down the line, what happened is the government itself said, you know what, instead of letting banks do this and allowing banks to, wine and dine schools to get them to use their bank instead of somebody else's bank for their loan programs, blah, 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 we will become direct lenders. We will work directly with the colleges, universities, and the trade schools, and we will let them originate loans through us. And so that the financial instruments of society will be on board with this, and so taxpayers won't balk too much. We'll guarantee these loans. What does that mean? By guaranteeing the loans, it means that no, you're going to get these repaid. So even though these folks are young, speaking primarily of traditional age students, even though they're young and they have no credit history and they have no collateral and don't have a degree yet, and thus this is a terrible person to invest in. Not that the people are terrible. Let me clarify that. People themselves are terrible. But this is a terrible financial investment, meaning we wouldn't give a loan to anybody else with those credentials in any other sector of the consumer economy. But since it's such a bad loan to give with a high chance of default, what we're going to do is we're going to guarantee them. And that means they can't ever charge it off. We won't let them bankrupt their way out of it. We're going to make them pay it back with very little exception. And because of that, the present day $1.73 trillion student loan debt crisis exists. Because once you borrow these loans, unlike any other loan you can borrow, you cannot bankrupt your way out of it. You cannot charge it off because they're guaranteed. And because it's held by the government has the ability to garnish your wages, has the ability to take your income tax refund, has the ability to put liens against your assets and seize those and sell them, put in your home. And yes, once you get to the forgiveness stage, if ever you arrive at that, now you get a 1099-G for the amount of the loans and interest that was forgiven, and that's credited to you as income in the year that you get forgiven. Now you owe taxes on that income that you did not pay the whole year that it's forgiven in that tax year to the IRS, who can do all the things that the Department of Education can do, which I just mentioned, in addition to throwing you in jail and incarcerating you for not making your repayment. So then what do you do? Well, then, maybe you do a Chapter 20. Maybe, in other words, you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy to clear off your consumer debt, and then follow that up immediately with a Chapter 13 to set up a payment schedule to repay the IRS for the, let's say, $100,000 income that they gave you in the year that they forgave your loan. You see how messy this is? You see how convoluted and how messed up it is? And see, you won't hear them talking about the practical realities of what forgiving your loan will mean. Let's say Biden does that. Let's say Biden does find a way to forgive everyone's loans. Well, the scenario I just marked out for you is what will happen. If all 1.73 or less, certainly all of it, if any amount is forgiven, they're going to issue you a 1099-G because it's going to be credited to you as income. Just like if you hit the lottery, that would be credited to you as income. Or if you won a substantial sum of money in the casinos, that would be attributed to you as income. Or if you had capital gains, that would be attributed to you as income. And thus, you'll have to pay taxes on it. Okay? If you are someone who makes $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, let's say you make $100,000 or more a year, right? You're in a particular tax bracket. And the moment you get an additional $100,000 of income, just like that, that means you've not paid taxes on it. Now, you're going to be owing the IRS that money. And if you don't have it to pay and to pay up, now you got the IRS chasing you, and you don't want that. You always want to stay on the right side of the IRS. So, in summary, what does all this mean? It means nothing to you if you are, getting ready to go to college and you haven't figured out yet how you're going to do that. It means you're in a perfect position. You're ideally positioned to avoid this nightmare altogether. And that's why we're here at Turn the Task Consulting Group, LLC, aka T3CG. You can find us on all the platforms, YouTube at T3CG. You can find us on Twitch. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on LinkedIn and Stephen Ampersand. But this is why we're here. Because if we can get to you before these institutions do, we can help you avoid this nightmare. But I also want to encourage you that if you're like me and you're an adult learner and a non-traditional learner and you've already done these things, right? We're here to help you too. We can help you navigate this process and help you to get through this, whether the president decides to forgive it or not. Just knowing what will happen after the fact arms you with information to help set yourself up for success. So please, if you haven't done so already, do contact us for your free consultation. You can do so at 484-574-1866. Just text us, I need a plan. We will set up a free consultation for you and get you on the road to your success, whatever that looks like, whether it's college, university, or a trade school. You can also send us an email at turningtassel@gmail.com. Same subject line, I need a plan. We will work with you with a free consultation to figure out what works best for you, your family, the people you love, so that you or they can get to through college, university, or the trade schools earlier on time with minimum to no debt. I'm Stephen Ampersand, and this is the Turn Tassel Show.
you